The courtroom doors burst open with a force that made everyone jump. Thaddeus Monroe stood frozen, his perfectly tailored suit suddenly feeling like a noose around his neck. The woman in the wheelchair rolling toward him wore a smile that could cut diamonds, his ex-wife, Eulalia. "Your Honor," her voice rang clear as crystal, "I'd like to present evidence that my former husband attempted to hide marital assets worth $1.2 trillion. Thaddeus felt his knees buckle. Trillion. His mistress, Vivienne, squeezed his arm so hard her nails drew blood. The entire courtroom erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters scrambled. This was the woman he'd thrown out like yesterday's trash 6 months ago. The woman he'd called a burden. The woman he'd left homeless with their sick son. How could she possibly? But before we get there, let me ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you'd give them everything, only to watch them throw it all away for something shinier? Ever wondered what happens when the person you underestimated becomes the one holding all the cards? Stick around, because this story will blow your mind. And hey, if you've ever felt underestimated or betrayed, hit that like button. You're gonna love where this goes. Subscribe because it's getting even crazier. 6 months earlier, everything looked perfect in the Monroe household of Greenwich, Connecticut, at least from the outside. Thaddeus Monroe was a regional investment manager at Palmer and Crest Financial. Decent salary. Nice house. 2 cars. The kind of life that looked good on Christmas cards. His wife, Eulalia, had been in a wheelchair for 3 years following a car accident that shattered her spine. Their 8-year-old son, Rafferty, had been diagnosed with a rare blood disorder that required monthly treatments costing thousands. But here's what nobody knew, not Thaddeus, not his colleagues, not even Eulalia's own mother. 2 weeks before the accident, Eulalia's eccentric great-uncle, Cornelius Ashford, had died in Monaco. The old man had made his fortune in rare earth minerals back in the 80s, then multiplied it 100-fold through strategic investments in emerging tech. He'd been a ghost to the family, hadn't spoken to anyone in 30 years. His will left everything to Eulalia. Every single penny. The lawyers managing the estate had strict instructions. Don't contact her until she turns 35. Cornelius believed young money corrupted people. He wanted his heir to understand struggle first. Eulalia turned 35 on March 14th, the day before Thaddeus filed for divorce. Thaddeus had been cheating for 8 months. Her name was Vivienne Blackwell, CEO of Luxe Cosmetics International, 42 years old, twice divorced, and worth about $80 million. She'd met Thaddeus at a charity gala where he'd been working the room, trying to land bigger clients. Vivienne wore power like perfume. Everything about her screamed success: the diamond earrings, the way she commanded attention, the penthouse overlooking Central Park. "Your wife," Vivienne had said during one of their early encounters, sipping champagne in her silk robe. "She's holding you back, darling. A man of your talents shouldn't be saddled with complications." Thaddeus had started believing it. Every time he came home to Eulalia struggling to transfer from wheelchair to bed. Every time Rafferty needed another hospital visit. Every time their savings account dipped lower because of medical bills. "I deserve better than this," he told himself. "I'm only 41. I shouldn't have to live like a nurse." What he didn't see, Eulalia taking online courses at night, building her expertise in estate management and corporate law. Preparing. What he didn't hear, the phone calls from Ashford estate lawyers, which she took in the bathroom with the door locked. What he didn't know, his wife was about to become one of the richest women in America. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday. Eulalia was helping Rafferty with homework when the process server knocked. The man looked uncomfortable, shoving papers at her and practically running back to his car. She read them once. Twice. Her hands didn't shake. She wouldn't give anyone that satisfaction. Irreconcilable differences. Breakdown of marital relationship. Petitioner requests full custody be reconsidered given respondent's physical limitations. That last part felt like a knife between her ribs. Rafferty looked up from his math problems. "Mom, you okay?" She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "We're fine, baby. Everything's fine." That night, Thaddeus didn't come home. He was at Vivienne's penthouse, celebrating his freedom with $1,000 wine. 3 days later, he showed up with a moving truck. "I need you both out by the weekend," he said, not quite meeting Eulalia's eyes. "Vivienne and we're making this official. I'm moving her in." Eulalia's voice came out steady. "Calm. Where exactly do you expect me to take our son?" Thaddeus shrugged, checking his Rolex. "There are programs. Social services. Figure it out, you're resourceful. Rafferty has treatments. Not my problem anymore." He started grabbing his clothes from the closet. "Maybe if you'd tried harder to recover instead of just giving up, we wouldn't be here." The cruelty was casual, effortless. Eulalia watched him pack, her face a mask. Inside, something crystallized, hard and sharp and absolutely certain. "Oh, Thaddeus," she thought. "You have no idea what you just did." The Ashford estate lawyers had been trying to reach her for days. Eulalia finally called them back from a motel room near Hartford, the cheapest place she could find that had wheelchair accessibility. Rafferty was asleep on one of the twin beds, his small chest rising and falling. The medical equipment they'd managed to bring beeped softly. "Ms. Monroe," the lawyer's voice was warm, professional. "Or would you prefer Ms. Ashford now? We've been attempting to contact you regarding your inheritance." "How much?" Eulalia asked. She needed to know the exact number. "The estate is valued at approximately $1.2 trillion. The assets include..." Eulalia stopped listening to the details. Her mind was already racing. Thaddeus had thrown her away thinking she was worthless. A burden. Dead weight. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. Within a week, things started happening. Eulalia established the Ashford Foundation, a charitable organization focused on medical research and accessibility. It gave her a legitimate public face while she rebuilt their lives. She bought a mansion in nearby Westport, 20 acres, fully accessible, with a medical suite for Rafferty. She hired the best doctors money could buy. Within 2 months, they'd found an experimental treatment that had Rafferty's numbers improving for the first time in years. But she kept it all quiet. Used her maiden name for everything. Wore simple clothes. Drove a modest SUV. She needed Thaddeus to stay blind just a little longer. Meanwhile, Thaddeus was living his best life. Vivienne's world was everything he dreamed of: yacht parties, exclusive clubs, meetings with people who actually mattered. She'd promoted him within her company, given him a vice president title he hadn't exactly earned. "We're perfect together," Vivienne purred one evening, running her fingers through his hair. They were at another gala, this one benefiting pediatric cancer research, ironically. "None of that dead weight dragging us down." Thaddeus grinned, downing his third scotch. "I should have left her years ago." "What about the kid?" "Rafferty." Thaddeus waved dismissively. "He's better off without me. Honestly, who knows if he was even mine. Eulalia was always so secretive about her past." The lie came easily. He'd convinced himself it was true. Across the room, someone was watching them. A woman in an elegant black dress, her wheelchair positioned near the silent auction tables. Eulalia smiled behind her wine glass. Soon, she thought. The first crack appeared when Palmer and Crest Financial lost its 3 biggest clients. Nobody could explain it. The accounts had been solid for years, then suddenly, within a week, all 3 companies pulled their investments and went elsewhere. Thaddeus's boss, Reginald, called him into the office. "What the hell happened, Monroe? These were your accounts." "I don't know." Thaddeus was sweating. "They won't return my calls." "Well, figure it out. We're looking at massive losses here." What Thaddeus didn't know, all 3 companies had been quietly acquired by subsidiary holdings of the Ashford Foundation. Eulalia's instructions to the new management had been simple and direct. Divest from Palmer and Crest immediately. Then Vivienne's company started having problems. A hostile investor was buying up shares, enough to demand a board seat, then 2 seats. Someone with unlimited resources and a taste for corporate restructuring. Who the hell is Ashford Holdings? Vivienne shrieked, throwing her phone across her office. Where did they even come from? Her lawyers scrambled. They're legitimate, massive conglomerate. Been operating quietly for decades. The principal owner it's not public information. Make it public. I want to know who I'm dealing with. But the Ashford lawyers were very good at their jobs. Every inquiry hit a legal wall. Vivienne started sleeping poorly. Her company's stock price was fluctuating wildly. Investors were spooked. Thaddeus tried to be supportive, but honestly, he was out of his depth. Maybe you could negotiate with them. Negotiate? Vivienne's laugh was harsh. They're trying to take everything I built. For the first time since they'd gotten together, she looked at Thaddeus and saw exactly what he was: decorative. Useless in a real crisis. 3 months after the divorce was filed, Eulalia's lawyer called Thaddeus. Mr. Monroe, we'd like to schedule mediation for asset division. Thaddeus laughed. Assets? What assets? The house was mine before we married, her medical bills drained the savings, there's nothing to divide. Nevertheless, my client insists on a formal proceeding. Fine. Whatever. Let's get this over with. The mediation was set for the following Monday at the county courthouse. Thaddeus didn't even bother preparing. He showed up 15 minutes late, Vivienne on his arm, wearing a suit that cost more than he used to make in a month. The mediator's office was standard. Beige walls, cheap furniture, water cooler in the corner. And there was Eulalia, positioned near the window. She'd lost weight, looked almost fragile in her wheelchair. Her lawyer sat beside her, a woman named Theodora Paxton who had a reputation for absolutely destroying opposing counsel. Mr. Monroe, Theodora began, shall we discuss the marital assets? There aren't any, Thaddeus said flatly. Look, I feel bad about the situation, but I'm not responsible for her medical expenses moving forward. That's what Medicaid is for. Vivienne squeezed his hand supportively. Eulalia spoke for the first time. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. Thaddeus, do you remember our wedding vows? He blinked. What? For richer or poorer? In sickness and in health. She smiled. You were very clear about the for poorer and in sickness parts. You didn't stick around for the other options. I don't have time for sentimental. On March 14th, Eulalia continued, I inherited my great-uncle Cornelius Ashford's estate. All of it. We were still legally married at the time. The room went silent. Thaddeus felt something cold crawl up his spine. What are you talking about? Theodora slid a folder across the table. The Ashford estate. Valued at $1.2 trillion. Technically, under Connecticut law, a portion could be considered marital property since the inheritance occurred during the marriage, even if you'd already filed for divorce. Thaddeus grabbed the folder, hands shaking. He saw numbers. Legal documents. Bank statements with balances that made his vision blur. This is a joke. No joke, Eulalia said. I'm one of the wealthiest women in the world. And you threw me out thinking I was worthless. Vivienne had gone white as paper. 1.2 trillion. Of course, Theodora continued professionally. My client is willing to keep her inheritance separate, given the acrimonious nature of your separation. She doesn't want your money, Mr. Monroe. Thaddeus's relief lasted exactly 3 seconds. However, Theodora's smile was sharp. We will be pursuing full child support, including compensation for emotional distress caused to Rafferty by your abandonment. We're calculating based on Ms. Ashford's current income bracket. We're thinking, $50 million per year should cover it. Plus medical expenses, education, and a trust fund. Thaddeus couldn't breathe. $50 million. You said Rafferty wasn't your problem anymore. Eulalia's voice cut like glass. Well, now he is. You wanted a divorce. Fine. But you don't get to abandon your son without consequences. Vivienne stood abruptly, her chair scraping. Thaddeus, we need to talk. Now. They stumbled out into the hallway. Through the door, Eulalia could hear Vivienne's hissed fury. You told me she was nobody. You said she had nothing. I didn't know. How could I have known? You're a liability. I can't be associated with this kind of, we're done. Don't call me, don't come to the penthouse, we are done. The sound of heels clicking away fast. Running, really. When Thaddeus came back in, he was alone. His face had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Eulalia, he whispered, please. I made a mistake. I was stupid, I was cruel, but please, we can fix this. I'll come back, we can be a family again. Eulalia's laugh was genuine. Joyful, even. Oh, Thaddeus. You really think I'd take you back? After you called our son not your problem? After you threw us out? I'll do anything. You'll do exactly what the court tells you to do. She rolled her wheelchair toward the door. Theodora followed. And Thaddeus. That 50 million per year. That's just the beginning. She paused at the doorway, looking back at him one last time. You taught me something valuable. You taught me that my worth was never about you. It was always inside me, you were just too blind to see it. The door closed with a soft click. Thaddeus stood alone in the beige room, the folder of financial documents spread in front of him like evidence at a crime scene. He'd thrown away $1 trillion. For a woman who'd just dumped him in a courthouse hallway. Remember Thaddeus? The guy who kicked his disabled wife and sick son out because he thought they were worthless. Yeah, he just found out she's worth $1.2 trillion. His mistress dumped him in a courthouse hallway. And now Eulalia's just getting started. What happens when the woman you betrayed has unlimited resources and absolutely nothing to lose? Let me show you. If you missed the beginning, it's linked in the description. Watch it first or this won't make sense. And hey, if you're Team Eulalia, smash that like button. Let's get into it. 3 weeks after the mediation, Thaddeus lost his job. Palmer and Crest Financial was hemorrhaging money. The board voted to restructure, which meant fire everyone expensive and hope the ship doesn't sink. Reginald delivered the news personally. Nothing personal, Monroe. The accounts you lost. We can't absorb those losses. Here's your severance package. 2 months' salary. For 12 years of work. Thaddeus sat in his car in the parking garage for an hour, staring at nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from the bank. Your mortgage payment of $8,400 is overdue. Please remit payment immediately to avoid penalties. The house. He'd forgotten about the damn house. When he'd been living with Vivienne, he'd stopped paying attention to his own expenses. She'd covered everything, dinners, trips, his new wardrobe. He'd let his mortgage slip, figuring he'd sell the place eventually. Now Vivienne wasn't returning his calls. Now he had no income. Now he had a court order demanding $50 million per year in child support, with the first payment due in 60 days. Thaddeus started laughing. It came out cracked, slightly hysterical. He was ruined. Eulalia, meanwhile, was thriving. Rafferty's new treatment was working miracles. His energy was up, his blood counts were stabilizing, and for the first time in years, he was talking about things he wanted to do when he grew up. Mom, he said one morning over breakfast in their sun-filled dining room, when I'm older, can I help you run the foundation? Eulalia's heart swelled. Baby, you can do anything you want. I want to help other kids like me. Kids who are sick. His face was serious, so much older than 8. I remember when Dad said I wasn't his problem. I don't want any kid to feel like a problem. She pulled him into a hug, fierce and tight. Thaddeus had abandoned gold when he walked away from this boy. But Eulalia wasn't done with her ex-husband. Not even close. She'd hired an investigator, a woman named Margot who specialized in financial forensics. I want everything, Eulalia had told her. Every account, every hidden asset, every corner he might try to hide money. Margot delivered 3 weeks later. Your ex-husband is more broke than he appears, she said, spreading documents across Eulalia's desk. But here's what's interesting. He's been taking consulting fees from Luxe Cosmetics that weren't properly reported on his taxes. About $200,000 over the past year. Tax fraud. At minimum, unreported income. Potentially more if we dig deeper. Margot's smile was predatory. I also found evidence he was using marital funds to pay for his affair, hotels, gifts, trips, all charged to joint credit cards while you were still married. Eulalia leaned back in her chair, thinking. She could destroy him with this information. Send him to prison. Probably. But prison was too easy. Too fast. She wanted him to understand, slowly and completely, what he'd lost. Thaddeus tried everything to avoid paying the child support. His lawyer, a public defender now, since he couldn't afford private counsel, filed motion after motion. Your Honor, my client simply doesn't have the means. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Constance Harding. She'd seen a lot of deadbeat parents in her career, but the sheer audacity of this case was remarkable. Mr. Monroe, she said dryly, you divorced your disabled wife, abandoned your sick child, and moved in with a millionaire. The court finds your claims of poverty unconvincing. But I lost my job. The support payment is more than I made in a decade. The court calculated support based on Ms. Ashford's income, which is substantial. The law is clear. If you can't pay, you'll face wage garnishment, asset seizure, and potentially contempt charges. Judge Harding looked at him over her glasses. I suggest you find employment. Thaddeus left the courthouse in a daze. Behind him, Theodora Paxton was already filing additional motions. The tax fraud case. The misappropriation of marital funds. A civil suit for emotional distress caused to Rafferty. Legal walls were closing in from every direction. Vivienne's life was also unraveling spectacularly. The hostile takeover of Lux Cosmetics was nearly complete. Ashford Holdings now controlled 51% of the company's shares. The new majority shareholder called a board meeting. Vivienne sat at the head of the table, her power suit armor against the inevitable. I'll fight this. You can't just. The door opened. Eulalia rolled in, Theodora beside her. The room fell silent. Hello, Vivienne, Eulalia said pleasantly. I believe we met briefly at that charity gala 6 months ago. The pediatric cancer research one. You were with my husband. Vivienne's face went through several colors. You're the majority shareholder. Guilty. Eulalia took her position at the opposite end of the table. I've been reviewing Lux Cosmetics financials. Interesting reading. All those consulting fees paid to Thaddeus Monroe, your boyfriend? Those weren't properly disclosed to shareholders. That's a fiduciary breach. You can't prove. I have receipts. Theodora placed a thick binder on the table. Hotel charges. Wire transfers. Emails discussing how to hide the payments. Ms. Blackwell, you used company funds to support your affair with a married man. The board has grounds to remove you for cause. Vivienne shot to her feet. This is revenge. This is business, Eulalia corrected gently. You said it yourself, didn't you? Dead weight dragging you down. Well, Vivienne, you're about to learn what that feels like. The vote was unanimous. Vivienne Blackwell was out. No severance. No golden parachute. Just a security guard escorting her out of the building while she screamed threats and obscenities. Eulalia watched from the boardroom window as Vivienne was loaded into a taxi, her designer bags tossed in after her. That felt good, she admitted to Theodora. Justice usually does. But the twist, the real twist, came from an unexpected direction. Rafferty had been quiet lately, more thoughtful than usual. One evening, he asked Eulalia, Mom, why did Dad leave us? She'd been dreading this question. Baby, sometimes adults make selfish choices. No, I mean. Rafferty picked at his dinner. Was it because of me? Because I'm sick? Eulalia's heart cracked. Rafferty, no. Listen to me. You are not a burden. You are not a problem. Your father left because he couldn't see what was right in front of him. How amazing you are. That's his failure, not yours. But he said. I know what he said. She wheeled closer, taking his hands. And he was wrong. Dead wrong. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Rafferty nodded, but she could see he didn't fully believe it. That night, She made a decision. Thaddeus was living in a studio apartment in Stamford now, the cheapest place he could find. His unemployment had run out. He was delivering food through an app just to make rent. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from creditors, lawyers, collection agencies. He'd lost everything. The house had been foreclosed. His car repossessed. His credit was destroyed. He was 41 years old and sleeping on an air mattress in a 400-square-foot studio with water stains on the ceiling. When his phone rang with an unknown number, he almost didn't answer. But something made him pick up. Thaddeus. Eulalia's voice. We need to talk. They met at a coffee shop in Westport, her choice. Thaddeus arrived early, desperate and disheveled. He'd worn his last decent shirt, but it was wrinkled and too big now. He'd lost weight. Eulalia rolled in exactly on time, Rafferty beside her in his wheelchair. The boy looked healthier than Thaddeus had ever seen him, color in his cheeks, bright eyes, actually smiling. Rafferty wanted to see you, Eulalia said simply. Thaddeus felt tears burning. Hey, buddy. Hi, Dad. Rafferty's voice was cautious. Not hostile, but not warm either. They sat in awkward silence for a moment. Finally, Eulalia spoke. The court case is destroying you. I know that. Thaddeus nodded, unable to speak. I could keep going. Sue you for the tax fraud, the misappropriation, emotional distress. I could put you in prison, probably. Hope and terror warred on his face. But Rafferty asked me not to. Thaddeus looked at his son. You did. Rafferty nodded. You're still my dad. Even if you were mean. Mom says people can change if they want to. The tears came for real now. Thaddeus couldn't stop them. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was selfish and cruel and I threw away everything that mattered. Yes, Eulalia said calmly. You did. I don't deserve forgiveness. No, she agreed. You don't. But that's not why we're here. She pulled out a folder. I'm offering you a deal. Work for the Ashford Foundation. We have programs that need managing, housing initiatives, medical research coordination. It's real work, not charity. You'll earn a salary, enough to live on, pay your debts. Thaddeus stared. Why would you? For him. She nodded at Rafferty. Because my son deserves to see that people can choose to be better. And because teaching you humility is more satisfying than destroying you. I'll do it, Thaddeus said immediately. Whatever you need, I'll. There are conditions. Her voice hardened. You work for me, you follow my rules. You attend therapy, real therapy, not just to check a box. You earn back the privilege of being in Rafferty's life slowly, carefully, on his terms. And if you ever betray my trust again, if you're cruel to him, if you disappoint him, I will end you so thoroughly you'll wish I just sent you to prison. Understood. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Say it. I understand. I'll be better. I swear I will. Rafferty looked at his mom. Can I talk to Dad alone for a minute? Eulalia hesitated, then nodded. I'll be right outside. When they were alone, Rafferty looked at his father with eyes far too old for 8. I was really mad at you, he said quietly. When you said I wasn't your problem. Thaddeus felt the words like a punch. Rafferty. But then I got better. The doctors Mom found, they're helping. And I'm not sick all the time anymore. He paused. I think maybe you leaving was supposed to happen. Because if you stayed, Mom wouldn't have found out about the money. And I wouldn't have gotten better. That doesn't make what I did okay. I know. Rafferty's voice was firm. But I'm gonna be okay anyway. And maybe you can be okay too, if you try really hard. Thaddeus pulled his son into a hug, careful of the medical port, of his fragile frame, and sobbed into his shoulder. I'll try, he whispered. I'll try so hard. 6 months later, things looked different. Thaddeus was managing a housing project for the foundation, providing accessible homes for disabled individuals. The work was hard, humbling, and deeply meaningful. He was good at it, actually. Better than he'd been at investment banking. He saw Rafferty twice a week, supervised at first, then gradually more independently. They were rebuilding slowly. It would take years, probably, but they were trying. Vivienne had declared bankruptcy and moved to Florida. Thaddeus saw her photo in a gossip column once, looking bitter and diminished. He felt nothing. Eulalia had started dating a kind, funny professor named Gideon who taught literature at Yale and treated her like she hung the moon. Rafferty approved. The foundation was expanding globally. Eulalia was on magazine covers now, the reluctant billionaire, from tragedy to triumph, all the usual stories. She handled it with grace and privacy, never exploiting Rafferty's illness, never publicly destroying Thaddeus though she easily could have. She'd won by being better. The story spread, as these things do. People loved it, the disabled woman betrayed by her selfish husband, who then revealed she was secretly one of the richest people alive. It became a kind of modern fairy tale. A reminder that worth isn't visible on the surface. Thaddeus became something of a cautionary tale in Greenwich social circles. Remember Monroe? Threw away $1 trillion for a trophy girlfriend who dumped him the second things got tough. But he was learning to live with that. He'd been given something rare, a second chance he absolutely didn't deserve. He wasn't going to waste it. Final scene. 1 year after the courthouse confrontation, Eulalia sat in the garden of their Westport mansion, watching Rafferty play with their dog, a golden retriever named Justice, because Rafferty had a sense of humor about these things. Gideon was reading beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. Her phone buzzed. A message from Thaddeus. Housing project finished ahead of schedule. Families are moving in next week. Thank you for believing I could do this. She smiled and put the phone away. Theodora had asked her once, "Do you regret giving him a second chance? You could have destroyed him." "I did destroy him," Eulalia had replied. "I destroyed the man who threw us away. What's left is someone who has to earn every single thing from scratch. That's not mercy, that's accountability." And it was. Thaddeus would spend the rest of his life knowing he'd had everything and threw it away. That his ex-wife was one of the most powerful people on the planet. That his son had survived and thrived without him. He would work for her foundation, live modestly, and try desperately to be worthy of the second chance he'd been given. That was Eulalia's revenge, not destruction, but transformation. She'd turned his betrayal into fuel. His cruelty into purpose. His abandonment into evidence of her unshakable strength. She'd won by becoming everything he never believed she could be. And now she was free. So what do you think? Was Eulalia right to give Thaddeus a second chance, or should she have destroyed him completely? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story hit you in the feels, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that subscribe button because I've got more stories like this coming. And trust me, they only get better. See you in the next one. The end.